Moving on, Nobel Peace Laureate Muhammad Yunus returned home to Bangladesh on Thursday to lead a new interim government after weeks of tumultuous student protest forced Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to resign and leave the country. Yunus is set to be sworn in as chief of the team of advisors in a short while from now at the official residence of President Mohammad Shahabuddin. Earlier, Yunus said Bangladesh's only Nobel laureate and harsh critic of Hasina arrived in Dhaka following the medical treatment that he was undergoing in Paris after protesters backed him for the role in a government tasked with holding elections for a new leader.
Using the means of revolution, Bangladesh will create its new dawn of victory. Keeping this vision ahead of us, we have to keep going ahead. I want to express my gratitude and praise the youth who have made this possible. They have protected this country and given it a rebirth, and we wish for this new Bangladesh to progress with speed.
Meanwhile, India's Ministry of External Affairs held a press conference in the capital, New Delhi, on Thursday. Addressing the media, spokesperson Randhir Jaiswal spoke on the ongoing crisis in Bangladesh, hoping that the country returns to normalcy soon.
Certain steps have been taken by groups and organizations, and we welcome that. But we want that the law and order situation in the country improves so that normal life can begin. We are closely monitoring the situation. We are in touch with them to ensure the safety and security of our missions, of our personnel who are manning those missions, and also for the safety and security of Indian nationals. Interest of the people of Bangladesh is foremost in our minds, in the mind of the government, and it's so important for government of India and for the people of India.
Earlier, India's Minister of External Affairs, Dr. S. Jaishankar, held discussion with UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy over the situation in Bangladesh and West Asia. India has said that citizens staying in Iran and Lebanon must exercise extreme caution.
The situation in West Asia is of extreme concern to us, as you know. There are around 3,000 Indian nationals in Lebanon. There are 10,000 people in Iran. Our embassies there, they have issued advisories for people to be alert, to be cautious. And given the situation, we would continue to call for de-escalation and call for restraint, because that is the need of the hour.
In the UK, giving a powerful message to protesters involved in creating disorder, Prime Minister Keir Starmer on Thursday reassured communities of criminal justice system working speedily for them.
Last night, I think the fact we didn't see the disorder that was feared is because we had police deployed in numbers in the right places, giving reassurance to communities. We were able to demonstrate the criminal justice system working speedily. So yesterday you saw the sentencing of individuals who've been involved in disorder days ago, some of them getting sentences as long as 3 years. That sent a very powerful message. But I also think that the work that's being done jointly to reassure our communities is becoming more effective.
Meanwhile, Taylor Swift's official website on Wednesday showed that a US singer's Austrian concerts planned for this week had been cancelled due to terror threat. The main suspect among 3 Austrian teenagers detained over a planned attack on the Swift's concert pledged allegiance to the Islamic State militant group and had chemical substances at home, as per authorities.
A 19-year-old
Austrian citizen was arrested today in the morning hours in Dernitz. Another related arrest was made today in the afternoon in Vienna. According to the current state of the investigation, the suspects radicalized themselves on the internet. The 19-year-old citizen of Low Austria swore allegiance to the current leader of IS at the beginning of July. Subsequently, the suspects made concrete preparations for a terrorist attack. Based on the current state of the investigation, we assume that the target of the attack were events in the greater Vienna area.
The key suspect, a 19-year-old male with North Macedonian roots, has been detained along with 2 others aged 17 and 15. The Austrian police on Wednesday detained 2 people suspected of plotting attacks on concerts. Meanwhile, British police have said there was nothing to indicate that a planned attack on Taylor Swift concert in Vienna would have an impact on her shows at Wembley Stadium, London, next week. Tensions are rising in West Asia with threats of an expanded conflict involving Israel. My colleague Benji Hire is in Washington, D.C., gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Benji, how is the situation evolving, especially involving Lebanon and Iran?
Yeah, fears of a full-scale conflict with Israel now evolving. Lebanon's healthcare system equipping itself with emergency medical supplies, intensively training staff for potential emergencies, with the World Health Organization delivering dozens of tons of medical supplies, including at least 1,000 trauma kits to Lebanon's health ministry. Meanwhile, further afield, Britain and Egypt have asked their airlines to avoid Iranian and Lebanese airspace altogether in anticipation of an Iranian retaliation against Israel following the killing of senior members of the militant groups Hamas and Hezbollah in recent weeks. Here in the US, United Airlines says its flights to Tel Aviv, which were paused last month due to security concerns, they remain suspended. Its rival Delta Airlines has paused its flights also between New York and Tel Aviv until the end of this month. Well, Trent Murray's been following developments for us on the ground in Lebanon's capital city, Beirut. Trent, thanks for joining us. These fresh airspace warnings come at the very same time as governments advising their citizens to leave. What is the latest on that front?
Yeah, Benji, I think it underscores just how difficult it is for foreign nationals here, including the roughly 4,000 Indian citizens that we know are in Lebanon, to try and secure a seat out despite those repeated warnings from their governments. We know, of course, that just a number of airlines have stopped flying here because of safety concerns. Certainly, all of the big European airlines have stopped. And these new airspace warnings, I think, will just continue to make it more difficult. We know in the past few hours, the likes of Lufthansa from Germany and ITA from Italy have extended their cancellations to Beirut, and that warning from the British runs all the way to November, effectively telling any airlines from the UK not to fly here until November, which I think probably speaks to how concerned they are that a long-running conflict could be coming. Now, we know on the Iranian front, just the list continues to grow of airlines avoiding that airspace. The likes of Air India, Singapore Airlines, British Airways, and even today Qantas, all the way from Australia, saying they simply will not fly in Iranian airspace right now because they are concerned about this coming attack, which Tehran is promising. So obviously tensions running high, concern continuing to build for foreign citizens here as they try to heed those warnings and find a way out.
And Trent, just briefly, I mean, you've been in Beirut for a number of days now. Amid those concerns that we've been talking about of a wider conflict, what is the mood on the ground where you are?
Well, look, I think for many people here, they are just trying to go about their life, go to school, go to work, but in the back of their mind, this sort of looming shadow of war is certainly in their consciousness. We've seen some reports of stockpiling at supermarkets, people stocking up on things like diapers and nappies, flour, sugar. The government is saying there's no need to do that. The country has got 3 months' supply if there is a conflict. But we also know, of course, that this country has seen war before, back in 2006, and those memories linger of just how much destruction and disruption that caused. So, look, needless to say, people here still on edge somewhat as they, like many others, anxiously await to see what this promised response from both Hezbollah and Iran will be against Israel. Benji.
Trent, thank you. Trent Murray for us in Beirut. From one conflict zone to another, Russian forces have been battling Ukrainian troops for a third day after Ukraine's army smashed through the Russian border in the Kursk region. It's one of the biggest Ukrainian attacks on Russia of the two-year conflict. Around 1,000 Ukrainian soldiers ramming through with tanks and armoured vehicles, covered in the air by swarms of drones and pounding artillery. Russian President Vladimir Putin's cast the attack as a major provocation. The White House says the United States, Ukraine's biggest backer, had no prior knowledge of the incident and it would seek more details from Kiev. While DD India correspondent Dasha Chernyshova has sent us this report from Moscow.
The Russian Ministry of Defense says it did not allow the advance of the Ukrainian troops in the border areas of the Kursk region over the past 24 hours. It said that the Russian military continued to eliminate the Ukrainian armed formations in districts directly adjacent to the Russian-Ukrainian border. That comes after Moscow vowed to crush the Ukrainian military who crossed into Russia earlier on Tuesday. The Chief of General Staff, Valery Gerasimov, said earlier that there were up to 1,000 Ukrainian servicemen involved. On Wednesday, they lost at least 300 people, including 100 dead. Local authorities say that at least 4 people have died among the civilian population as a result of this Ukrainian incursion. Acting governor of the Kursk region said that 6 Ukrainian drones and 5 missiles have been intercepted over the region overnight. At least 3,000 civilians have left the border areas of the Kursk region. Russia's former president and Security Council deputy chairman Dmitry Medvedev said the incursion is the reason why Russia's special military operation in Ukraine should gain a clear extraterritorial nature. Dasha Chernyshova reporting in Moscow for DD India.
Republican presidential candidate here in the United States, Donald Trump, will be holding a news conference at his Florida residence in a little under 4 hours from now. The former president's remarks coming off the back of Vice President Kamala Harris's confirmation as the nominee for the Democratic Party ticket. She's been on the road with her selection of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate. Well, that's it from me here in Washington. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Benji. Have a good day. Moving on, in Kenya, police fired tear gas to clear pockets of anti-government demonstrators from the center of capital Nairobi on Thursday, as the protest movement sought to capitalize on earlier concessions and compel President Ruto to resign. The Nane Nane March, meaning 8-8 in reference to the date following weeks of similar pro-reform protests that saw Ruto scrap planned tax hikes and overhaul his government. The youth-led nationwide protests began peacefully in June before turning violent, and more than 50 people have been killed. Shops were shut, streets deserted after riot police set up roadblocks and threw tear gas canisters to disperse handful of protesters across Nairobi's financial district. Police fired tear gas at one group of a dozen protesters, chanting, "Ruto must go." As part of Plant for Mother campaign launched by India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Speaker of Sri Lankan Parliament Mahinda Yapa Abewardene and High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka Santosh Jha jointly inaugurated the Sri Lanka-India Friendship Arch. Sri Lankan ministers and other senior officials participated by planting Murata saplings, symbolizing shared commitment to a greener future.
Indian government, I think chaired by His Excellency the Prime Minister, has started the environment-friendly they have initiated this 1 tree for 1 person proposal, and it's a thing that is happening in India. As a country with the Sri Lankan government, we are doing the same thing, helping supporting that concept we have initiated in Sri Lanka.
Let's now turn to other stories making news around the world. Hundreds of Colombians and Venezuelans gathered at the Medellin to demand respect for democracy in Venezuela and reject incumbent President Nicolás Maduro after a disputed presidential election result on Wednesday. Demonstrators waved flags, banners to denounce the alleged electoral fraud. Amazon reports a surge in capital spending on artificial intelligence, joining big tech companies. A $1.5 billion increase has been observed in its capital investments from the previous 3 months, mostly for building cloud and generative AI infrastructure. A search operation has been launched after former Catalan separatist leader Carles Puigdemont defied arrest after addressing a public rally on Thursday. He returned to Spain after 7 years of self-imposed exile. Puigdemont disappeared backstage, after which police and media were unable to locate him. An uncolored pencil cover artwork of Marvel's famed mercenary Deadpool is up for auction at Heritage Auctions with a $7.5 million price tag. The artwork was created in 1991 by writer-artist Rob Liefeld for New Mutants' 98th edition, one of the highest-selling comic.
I smell what you're stepping in, Sensei. Your little cinematic universe.
Okay, that's all for this edition of DD India Global. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. This app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan this QR code on your screens to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Global. Namaskar.